Hi everyone, Shafiq here. Welcome to another edition of Founders Forum, where we answer questions submitted by founders and innovators like yourself. But before we do, I want to remind you to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well as click the notification bell so you can gain immediate access to the latest episodes of our shows where we help founders by answering critical questions related to systematically building your startup. All right, hey Steven, are you ready with our first question?
All right, hey there, Shafiq. Yes, I am. I'm ready right here with the first question. Now, before I read the question, I gotta say, Shafiq, you and I have always had a professionally diverse audience attending our in-person meetups. So, in addition to founders, we've had investors, both angels and VCs, enterprise innovation teams, product managers, professors, civic leaders, and consultants. So, speaking of which, our first question comes from Tara M. from Grant Thornton. And she writes, how do startups attract and retain C-suite talent? Should they focus more on accomplishing certain fits rather than others, such as industry exposure, hard skills, past startup exposure, etc.?
Okay, so let's start with talking about when to recruit C-suite talent, because initially startups shouldn't be trying to attract C-suite talent when they're still trying to achieve market validation. Not until they've mastered repeated sales and delivery phase and are ready for scale, that's when it makes sense to start recruiting C-suite talent. So as long as we get the when question out of the way, and the reason, of course, is because C-suite talent in general are used to operating with resources, and bringing them on early can really mess up the team dynamics. Plus, your high-powered talent will be frustrated trying to work scrappy. So knowing when to bring on talent is very important. And assuming your startup is ready for C-suite talent, then start with the first qualifying criteria. The C talent must be aligned with your customer base and the problem you're solving. If they don't really care about the problem nor the customer base, then they're in it just for the money. So at the first sign of trouble, they're not going to have the patience necessary to work through the business challenges. And of course, next, you definitely want to focus on a good soft skills. We focus on 3 specific skills at LeanMastery. The first is analysis. The executives can take, they need the ability to take in data and draw the correct conclusions given the limited amount of data that's available to startups. So being a good analyst is a must. Then they must have the ability to prioritize. You have so many different things to do, and if they're not able to prioritize goals and focus on relevant execution targets, then they're just going to kind of flounder and work things out of order. Now, if they're good C-suite talent, they're not looking too far ahead. They're focused on the the immediate goals are and getting things done, knocked off one at a time, so the team can continue making progress. And of course, the last soft skill we look for is decision making. And it's not that they have, there's a specific kind of decision making we look for. They must be, specifically, they know how to hedge their bets, right? And they don't play the all-in, like the Texas Hold'em game, where they go in all in on every decision. Sometimes it's necessary to go all in, but that can't be the default decision-making style. They must be able to survive one or two bad decisions. So it's important that they're able to hedge their bets. Of course, as far as hard skills, depending on the position, lack of industry knowledge and specific technical skills may be deal breakers. Our preference is someone who has helped small teams get large real fast. So when they have that in their background, then it's definitely a plus. Steven, would you like to add anything to my long explanation there?
No, first off, thank you. I do have a little to add, but I want to first off say thank you to Tara M for asking this question. I think this speaks to the heart of team alignment. So Shafiq, you really already covered the heart of your question. Now, what I do want to do is clarify a couple of things. So when you were referring to the C-suite, for those who are unfamiliar with that reference, this really covers any senior executive within an organization, such as the CEO, CMO, as in Chief Marketing Officer, or CTO, Chief Technology Officer, and there are others. And if you think of it this way, unlike, say, a bank that may have dozens of VPs, a startup typically has a handful of C-level executives to keep the organization flat and really kind of lean. Also, the C-level executives really are needed, or they're needed when the startup grows. The need will evolve as a startup grows, actually, to be more precise. So another way to look at it would be an early stage startup typically will not need a full-time CFO, chief financial officer, until the third startup phase of sustainable growth, or when they raise substantial institutional investment and they have a need for reporting or reporting purposes, or there's a lot more going on in terms of their accounting function. There's one other thing. Shafiq described alignment within the senior executive team in their desire to solve a compelling problem. This is also true and necessary for all members of the organization, especially early on. Think about it. A startup can easily get outbid when it comes to compensation for talent and lose a key resource such as a developer or a product designer, and that alone can be quite disruptive. However, startup team members who are excited about solving the problem, just like Shafiq described, those people will stick around longer and be more willing to accept non-cash compensation. And cash is really, really precious early on when you don't have a lot of resources. Okay, next question. And this one comes from a first-time founder who is just starting out as she's working on a startup related to an e-commerce platform. For this founder, she writes, I'm not a coder, but my startup idea is software related. My question is, do I hire a coder or find someone to be my technical co-founder to get my initial functional prototype built?
Well, since this founder is working on a software solution and is still in market validation phase, I assume they need to build out their app. And since that is a common way to work on a functional prototype, however, it should be no surprise to anyone watching our series that we do not recommend hiring a coder when you're trying to build your functional prototype during market validation phase. It's more appropriate later on when you're trying to figure out how to really bring that fully functional version 1.0 of the product out. But that's not necessary for market validation. So you're better off using existing off-the-shelf tools to figure out if you can deliver the value. So as an example, let's say that you notice through your friend who's let's say a sneaker aficionado, that there are a lot of sneakerheads who purchase dozens of shoes each year worth thousands of dollars. Some of these shoes are very hard to purchase and there is a thriving secondhand market. So you want to set up a marketplace for individuals who can trade their sneakers for other sneakers of equivalent value or even money when they tire of wearing their sneakers. And you notice as you look around, there really isn't a way for people to trade their goods. They are like eBay sites, but they just don't cater to specifically to the sneakerheads. So how can you set up a functional prototype without having to actually build out the app? Well, the first challenge is how to figure out other sneakerheads to trade with. And after interviewing several sneakerheads you found through your friend, you notice that there are some groups on Reddit that talk about their sneaker finds. You also notice that some of these sneakerheads are on Instagram. So you decide to set up an Instagram channel to showcase rare sneakers and invite all sneakerheads to send in a short video of their prized sneakers to feature on your channel. Now, you then feature the best submission and ask people if they would like to acquire that sneaker. By using Instagram, you can validate demand as well as the role you will play in facilitating the transaction. Even though you did it manually, you're able to solve the problem of the sneakerheads discovering rare to find sneakers and trading them. Plus, you got to play the role of the intermediary who ensured that the person selling the sneaker was not going to get rip off the final customer. So you did all that without having to build out a prototype. In almost all circumstances, we find that when trying to get market validation, you rarely need to build out your functional prototype using code. So it is fairly easy to manually solve the problem using off-the-shelf solutions. So Steven, is there like a different angle you want to talk about this in?
No, this is great, Shafiq. I love this example of what a startup team could do to hack Instagram to effectively build a functional prototype, even though it's kind of using the Wizard of Oz prototype method where a lot of things are happening behind the curtain that people, the potential customers wouldn't see, but effectively it makes it look like there's real business behind there. So that's pretty cool. Now, from my perspective, this is one of the best parts of working on a startup. You get to be creative in developing your solution, especially when it comes to hacking together off-the-shelf tools for an early version of your product or service, just like you described. And the thing is, it's easier to do this more now than ever, especially using tools that create automation workflows and enable data sharing. Plus, the documentation on how to do this is really gotten to be easy, even for non-technical founders. Now, some founders, and I've seen, they kind of struggle with the fact that this version of their product, that what it represents, and they struggle with the aspect that it's just a means to an end, which will be iterated upon. It'll be improved and sometimes thrown away for a complete rebuild. And this is true even if you have a coder who builds the initial prototype. Okay, last question, Shafiq, and this one comes from a second-time founder who is working on a consumer packaged goods startup that is currently in the market validation phase. And he writes, the problem dimension I am solving is focused on improving quality over existing solutions. Can you explain how I can measure the quality improvement for calculating the actual relative value?
That's an often asked question we get from founders. It is relatively easy to measure and communicate the difference for cost dimension as well as the time dimension. However, the quality dimension presents a conceptual challenge. That's because you not only have to calculate the value difference, but also figure out how to communicate it back to your user. So it does you no good to know you're better than the alternative, but never develop the ability to easily communicate the difference to your customers. So let's look at an example. Let's say that the quality difference you are trying to communicate is in terms of reliability. Then in that case, you want to highlight the results of your testing that showcases your product's durability. In cars, they do that by providing, like, say, the 100,000 mile warranty. The automaker accomplishes two objectives by promising a 100,000 mile warranty. They stand behind the quality of their product, and they're managing the customer's risk. In clothing, they do that by showcasing how the jeans can be misused and still last a long time. Of course, Stephen already covered how to convey the quality difference you're providing when the difference is based on one of better raw materials. If you recall the steak example where Taste of Texas displayed the Angus logo on the cooked steak. For hardware products, they often talk about mean time between failures. And for software, they'll highlight compliance with security standards and, of course, uptime standards through SLAs. So there's no universal method for communicating quality difference, but there are examples depending on the type of product or service you provide. Stephen, you want to elaborate on this one?
Yes, I want to remind everyone why you should perform a relative value analysis, since that was kind of implied in the question. While the relative value analysis provides you a quantifiable understanding regarding your solution's market potential, because that's really the outcome of doing the analysis, it also forces founders to measure their startup's attributes, both good and bad, as well as attributes of their competitors. Now, Shafiq, you just touched on this in regards to being able to communicate the difference. Simply enough, knowing how well your startup performs relative to others makes it easier to market and sell your product, as well as measure whether your customers are experiencing your solution's promised value. In other words, if you can't quantify how your product or service is better than existing alternatives, how can a founder expect their customers to come up with that answer, much less have most customers arrive to a common point of view? I think you really kind of touched on that pretty well, Shafiq, but it's worth emphasizing. Now, measurement may be difficult, especially related to quality improvement, but there's always an answer. So I do want to jump back to one of the examples Shafiq mentioned, the Angus steak. The Angus steak brand didn't just happen. The organization who was behind it, who bred the Angus cattle, they measured the quality of the beef relative to other cattle options. Likewise, they surveyed consumers to understand whether the taste and texture were measurably better. Now, When you come up with a measurable improvement, what is the result? Well, in the case of Hyundai, which is also effectively another example Shafik you touched on, when they introduced the 100,000 mile 10-year warranty, that was double the industry standard at the time. So not only did it, by offering that warranty, not only did it shift people's perception away from the view that Hyundai made a poor quality car, but it also forced other car manufacturers to match the warranty offer at, frankly, great peril that they would encounter significant warranty repair costs later, because they would match the warranty, but then they weren't prepared for the outcome of that, necessarily like Hyundai had planned. Okay, that's all the time we have for questions right now. If you're looking to build your startup lean, please click the link nearby or drop your question in the comments below. Also, please subscribe to our channel and click the notification button so you can receive immediate access to our latest episodes. Building Lean is brought to you by the LeanMastery Incubator. Unlike other incubators or accelerators that rush you to pitch to investors whether you're ready or not, LeanMastery guides you in building key business functions that turn up revenues fast, which puts you in the best position to successfully raise money and outrun your competition. Learn more about how you can become a LeanMastery Incubator member at leanmastery.co. Thank you all for watching, and we look forward to helping you be successful in pursuing your startup dreams by building lean.